So let's start with now. What are you working on now?
Now I'm working on a series of pictures that have been based on India. I was in India for the first part of the year, and before that, last year as well, I went, and I was hanging around the Ganges a lot, and there are lots of interesting people that come around and sit around there, and I just found them really fascinating and watching them, and I was taking photographs and doing some drawings and stuff, and I decided to try and make some paintings. So the first one I made was last year, which I had in London, and then I was very happy with the way it came out, and I decided to focus on that. So it's basically, it's not just people, it's people and things that I saw around the river Ganges, basically. So there's a lot of sort of holy people or interesting people just hanging around or walking around as pilgrims, and just the general life that's happens around there. There's a lot of movement, a lot of things to see, and a lot of it just inspires me. And it's been years that I'm just trying to work out how I can bring it into my work, and so it's.
What takes you to India?
It's the only place I've been. When I first went, I went 15 years ago the first time, and I couldn't stand it, and I stayed for 4 years, and I said I'm never ever going to come back. And yet I went to other places afterwards, and nothing was as interesting. Even though it was difficult, India constantly was in my head for some reason, and so since about 2005, then I've been going every 2 years more or less, and spending a long time, 3-4 months. It's endlessly inspiring. It's not easy. It's not an easy place to hang about in, although it gets easier as you get used to it. But it's just, for me, it's nothing else is quite as interesting. It's so vast and there's so much to see. It's just.
Do you work while you're there?
I always try to work when I'm there, and I usually fail. But I do actually manage to. I end up with something.
Why do you fail?
Because what I achieve when I'm there usually doesn't have any relevance to what I want to achieve when I'm there. So if that makes sense, it's like it just doesn't look as good when I'm there. When I come back, however, and this has happened quite often, I work back. I work from either photos or drawings or work that I started when I was there, and by thinking about my experience, I can actually get a better impression of my feeling of what I wanted to achieve when I was there. Whereas when I'm there, it's like it's too overpowering. There's too many. It's not just what you're seeing; it's the colours, it's the smell. And also I think when you're there, I think the actual smells and the sensations in India are so strong that you can't actually. I'm sure that you actually have a different sensibility when you're there. For instance, we bought some perfume or some oils when we were there this time, and they didn't seem to have any smell. When we got back, they're really strong. When we were there, we couldn't smell them. We said we even gave some back to the shop. Said this, doesn't smell, but actually it does. It reeks. And it's the same, I think, with painting. When I'm painting there, the colours just don't seem to vibrate in the same way as they are in real life. But when I get back, I'm better able to recreate it. And I need the peace and quiet of my studio, and I need to be able to think about what I'm seeing, what I've seen, and somehow when I'm there, it's like a bombardment of images it's a sensational bombardment, basically. Everything is alert and active constantly, and it's like it's too much. It's overpowering. That's why the first time I went, I couldn't actually take it in. It was too, but it wouldn't leave my brain. And the first time I went, actually, that was before digital and all this stuff. So I had my rolls of film. And
when was it?
1999. We were there for the millennium, I think. And of all the photos I took, there was one that didn't come out. That it printed twice. It exposed itself twice on the thing, and that was the only one that actually had any of the sensation of India for me. And that was, but it was a bad photo. But I started to realise that was how India felt to me. It was this juxtaposition of 2 or 3 things happening at the same time on top, and my work started to change then because of that. So
And it's actually affected what you're doing right now.
Well,
hasn't
since
it?
then it became a constant thing that I was looking for in my work, and it's ever since then, because for that to develop into my work, it took another 2 or 3 years after that, and then it started to manifest itself. This idea of having several things over the top or whatever, it became a permanent fixture in a way of what I'm doing. And now I'm sort of going. Well, now that I'm getting so old. Now I was.
Where's your walking frame, by the way?
Oh, that's around the corner. Yeah. No, now that I've got enough history to look back at what I've been doing, I can see that I can see where what's really important to me, which steps I've made in the right direction, or which things are actually really integral to what I'm trying to achieve, whatever that is. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So here I'm still mixing up. This is slightly darker because I want to just lay this over the top.
And how would you say, since we went as far back as 1999, how would you say your work has changed over these years?
It's hard to say because
I mean, it's a good 15 years since then.
Yeah, but how's my work changed since then?
Well, when did you start painting?
Well, I've always been painting, so I would say since I came to Greece in '94, it became based on the figure very strongly, and it became very much based on light and shade, but more about shade, more about the darkness that I saw in Greece. And then going to India, it was like throw everything out the window.
So most people focus on the light in Greece, and you focused on the darkness.
There was a house near my house. There was a small ruined stone sort of thing in the field, and I remember I used to go down there. And when you came from outside, it was so dark when you looked through the door, you couldn't see anything because it was this bright light outside. And there was one basket, I think, hanging on a string just in front of a side window, and it was just that was catching the light, and everything else was pitch black. And the idea of this thing just suspended, and you couldn't really tell anything about the space. You couldn't even see what it was clearly because only parts of it were lit. That was, in a way, a really important sort of. That was one of the main things that I needed in my work at that time. That became a sort of central focus, even though I've never painted a basket hanging in the light. It wasn't that, but it was the light that comes into this dark space that leaves things a bit mysterious. You're not sure where things are, because basically a figurative painter, sort of, but I'm not really that interested in describing everything. I'm interested in certain things. There are certain things that if I want to draw something, it's not everything that I want to draw. It's that particular thing. The fact that it happens to be in an environment. I see in a lot of figurative, realistic work that people they don't know where to stop, and they sort of draw everything, especially now everything's getting into a very sort of photographic, realistic, sort of awful kind of situation. I mean, they can be interesting to look at, but for me it's not the point of painting. Painting is about focusing on the thing that you want and unifying that within the structure of the painting, because in the end of the day it's the painting that matters. It's the thing itself. It's has to exist on its own without reference to anything else. You have to be able to see it, even if you could subtract the subject, it should still work as a painting. So it should work on a sort of abstract dimension. What I mean is that the harmony which exists within the painting that you construct, or the thing that you construct, has to be strong enough that it doesn't need the subject to justify it.
Talking about how your style evolved.
Well, I don't really have a style, recently I've decided it's a good idea, and I would tell this to anyone, is to keep all your options open as long as you can when you're making anything. This applied to me as well. You get so sort of blocked with ideas that I shouldn't do this, or I should be. If I paint like this, and I should be doing it this way, or if I shouldn't use as a photograph to work from, or I should draw from life, or I should be. You can forget all of these things. I think it's important to just to focus on what it is you want to achieve. What do you want to do when you work? And you know, you have to keep reevaluating yourself and finding out what it is that you want to do. And when you get clearly past all these blockages, this embodia, all this this stuff, which it's amazing how many we have. I mean, and that's in everyday life as well. You know, if you can get rid of all of these things and just find and just to sort of do what it is that you want to do without questioning why, it sort of answers itself somehow. So with India, I found that there were so many things that I was interested in that I didn't know where to begin, and it's taken me, well, it's 15 years since I first went, and I think it's taken all that time to finally sort of find out for myself what it is that I can do with going to India, with the images that I sort of have in my head, or photographs that I've taken, or drawings that I've made, or photographs. The photographs, I'm starting to use them as well into the work, and I'm starting to find a way to unify all of these things together, and they're coming out in a thing. But it's going to take a long time. It's going to take the next 2 or 3 years before I start to find until it starts to have a real. Now, what's the word I'm going to look for? So it starts to have a unity, no?
A thematic unity?
Yeah, because at the moment they can be coming out in sort of different, all sorts of things are coming out, and I want them to come out because I've taken away all the blockages that I had, so they're all coming out in different sort of ways, and eventually those things will all start to form themselves into a whole. But it's, until that happens, and it can't happen straight away, it has to happen, as I'm painting, it has to happen as they happen, if that makes any sense. If I'm talking loads of rubbish, I'm sorry, but it's the nefti.
It's very strong, the nefti. How does the nefti affect the brain? Have you actually looked it up ever?
Perhaps I should have done.
I'm wondering for myself right now.
Well, just what you're taking in now, it won't affect anything at all. But I've definitely lost all my memory, and I've lost my sense of smell. But apart from that, it's fine. But that's 25 years, more or less, of working solidly with this stuff. You see, that bit I want to leave, because I like that bit. These are basically old, they're old sacking cloths. Mm-hmm. They're old sacks of rice that I bought when I was in India. I bought them, they were...
You mean the canvas?
It's not canvas, yeah, this the canvas that I'm painting on. If you look at the back of the canvas, maybe that's... so you can get more of an idea. And I got a tailor. These are old sacks that I got him to sew them together while I was in India, and they're old vegetable sacks or rice sacks or something, painted on jute, or it's a jute or burlap or whatever they call it. So I got this the tailor. I worked with him, and he managed to sew. He made me 12 large canvases like this out of these sacks, which I then sent back to Greece, and I'm working on these now.
Talking about how your style evolved.
Well, I don't really have a style, recently I've decided it's a good idea, and I would tell this to anyone, is to keep all your options open as long as you can when you're making anything. This applied to me as well, you get so sort of blocked with ideas that I shouldn't do this, or I should be, if I paint like this, and I should be doing it this way, or if I shouldn't use a photograph to work from, or I should draw from life, or I should be... You can forget all of these things. I think it's important to just to focus on what it is you want to achieve. What do you want to do when you work? And you have to keep reevaluating yourself and finding out what it is that you want to do. And when you get clearly past all these blockages, this embodia, all this stuff, which it's amazing how many we have. And that's in everyday life as well. If you can get rid of all of these things and just find... and just to sort of do what it is that you want to do without questioning why, it sort of answers itself somehow. So with India, I found that there were so many things that I was interested in that I didn't know where to begin, and it's taken me, well, it's 15 years since I first went, and I think it's taken all that time to finally sort of find out for myself what it is that I can do with going to India, with the images that I sort of have in my head, or photographs that I've taken, or drawings that I've made, or photographs. The photographs, I'm starting to use them as well into the work, and I'm starting to find a way to unify all of these things together, and they're coming out in a thing. But it's going to take a long time. It's going to take the next 2 or 3 years before I start to find until it starts to have a real. Now, what's the word I'm going to look for? So it starts to have a unity. No.
A thematic unity?
Yeah, because at the moment they can be coming out in sort of different, all sorts of things are coming out, and I want them to come out because I've taken away all the blockages that I had, so they're all coming out in different sort of ways, and eventually those things will all start to form themselves into a whole. But it's, until that happens, and it can't happen straight away, it has to happen, as I'm painting, it has to happen as they happen, if that makes any sense. If I'm talking loads of rubbish, I'm sorry, but it's the nefty.
It's very strong, the nefty. How does the nefty affect the brain? Have you actually looked it up ever?
Perhaps I should have done.
I'm wondering for myself right now.
Well, just what you're taking in now, it won't affect anything at all. But I've definitely lost all my memory, and I've lost my sense of smell. But apart from that, it's fine. But that's 25 years, more or less, of working solidly with this stuff. You see, that bit I want to leave, because I like that bit. These are basically old, they're old sacking cloths. Mm-hmm. They're old sacks of rice that I bought when I was in India. I bought them, they were...
You mean the canvas?
It's not canvas, yeah, this the canvas that I'm painting on. If you look at the back of the canvas, maybe that's... so you can get more of an idea. And I got a tailor. These are old sacks that I got him to sew them together while I was in India, and they're old vegetable sacks or rice sacks or something, painted on jute, or it's a jute or burlap or whatever they call it. So I got this the tailor. I worked with him, and he managed to sew. He made me 12 large canvases like this out of these sacks, which I then sent back to Greece, and I'm working on these now. This is how they start off, basically. Something like that. That's just been stretched, and then I've covered it with Atlacol to fill up all the holes in here. Then the first layer of paint that I do is with acrylic, and then I build the image up more or less with acrylic, and also with sticking on all this junk that I've got in the studio, because I've got all this bits of rags and cloth, which I find really interesting. I'm loath to throw them away.
Where'd you find these?
They were in this house because this is my studio. It was full of stuff which they asked me to clear out, and I can't throw it away. So
You're clearing it out artistically.
well, like there's this nice bits of red. Look at how nice this is. I mean, it's rotten. You can't do anything with it. It's all this mouldy, stained, bleached cloth. But I find it so beautiful, such a nice colour that, so I start to stick it on and then draw on top with charcoal and with acrylic paint, and then put more glue and more stuff. Also, when you send packets back from India, you have to wrap the boxes, you have to wrap them with cloth. So I also, these old cloth things, I stick them on as well. This is one of the cloths. So in here, there's loads of that. I don't know if you can see it anymore. This writing which is underneath, all these are from bits of that cloth which is stuck on the top. I stick everything on just to build up the texture and to make it interesting. After I've painted it all on, then I start to rip it all off. So to get, first of all, there's several reasons I do that. One is because I don't want it to come off after I finish painting. I want to make sure that the damage has been done before so when it's finished I know that not really anything else can come off. So I work off anything that can come off where the glue hasn't stuck properly or whatever. I take it off in advance, so it's already got this, it's been taken down. It's like, you can't really treat a painting worse than I treat it before I paint on it, before it's
Tough love.
finished. Yeah, like all these things here, I rip them off, and all these lines, but they contribute to the painting as well, because they give it a sort of energy which comes into the canvas itself. It's sort of a symbiotic relationship between the canvas, which is a thing, and the painting, which is an image, and the two things are coming together to form a unified a thing. I don't know what else to call it. In fact, it's difficult. It becomes the painting becomes the fact of itself without reference to the subject. At the moment it's very much the subject, but this will, as I glaze it, the glazing will increase the texture in the paint, it will increase the vibrancy of that, it will exaggerate all these marks and everything, and also unify the whole thing together, and then it will hopefully sort of work. So.
I need my seat back.
Oh, sorry, I'll move it again. So that's why I ripped them off to stop it happening later.
So you've been doing that with all the new pieces that you've been working on since you came back from India?
But I've been doing it before. I've been doing it the last 3 or 4 years actually. I've been doing it anyway, but it became more. It became much because there's so much texture in India as well. All these interesting and all the writing and all this stuff. I just find it so fascinating. I want to put it in my pictures, and I never really knew how. And then I saw it on these sacks, and I said, you know, it's such a. If you start painting on something which is already that coarse, you can't avoid you can't avoid the actual feel of the canvas, you know, because you can't hide from it. It's dominating, and for me, it's always about that balance between the thing that you're working on and the thing that you're trying to create. Because I don't ever want them to become just what's the word? To become just illusionistic. I want it always to fit within that you can see what it is, but you can also see that it's not only that, it's also the thing itself, and that's why the dimension is really important. And that's also why looking at photographs of pictures of paintings is less than satisfactory, because it's always important the presence that the picture has when you're in front of it. It gives you something. It's the sheer size of it, also the room that it's put in, or the place where you see it is also important. Like this studio here, you can't see it at all because the light's really bad. I mean, I tend to look in a mirror in order to see what I'm doing. I mean, this one I know what I'm doing, but I tend to stand with my back to it and look in the mirror. Then you get to see from a distance, you know, what's going wrong, if it's working. Which bit sticks out? You get to see compositionally which bits are sticking out too much, which bits are, you know, if it's all hanging together. Because all this, for instance, now, this is very clearly these bits, all these sort of shapes are very much stronger. When I glaze the whole thing, they will get much more reduced, and it'll become coherent. I wish I could glaze it now, but I can't. It has to dry now. Need this wind.
So the glazing you were saying earlier it's actually an ancient technique.
Glazing is it comes all the way back from the beginning of painting. It was it's just all it is that with oil paint there are several. You've got opaque, translucent, and transparent colours, and the glazing colours are simply the transparent colours which it's like putting it's like laying a colour over the top, or if you imagine, it just changes the tone of the whole painting. It's if you mix up a red glaze. If I was to put a red glaze on top of this, it would tint the whole thing red. But it doesn't just tint it. By working into it and the underneath has to be dry, otherwise, because there's turpentine inside the mixture. By working into it, it brings out the texture of the painting underneath, polishes it, and it also creates this depth. It gives the colour a depth, which is something that quite often you don't see in modern painting, really. And it's ever since the Impressionists sort of got rid of some of the old techniques, and then they never really got reintroduced, because there wasn't really a need for it. Whereas there are people that do use it, and it can be a very valid part of painting. I mean, it has to be. For me, it's essential. Everything I do, I glaze it in the end. Because basically, once I bring a painting to a certain point, then I glaze the entire thing, and that unifies it, and then I finish it from that point onwards. Because from that point, I can see how the composition is, and I can see what needs to be brought out more, what needs to be taken back, so I can get the balance. Until that point, it's sort of patchy, let's say. Because this one, I actually quite like it as it's coming along. It seems to more or less work, apart from the hand. Don't look at the hand. But apart from that, everything else is more or less working, and I could even sort of leave it. But I want to glaze it because I think it's going to give it an extra added thing. Anyway, I'll get the hand later. You see, there's a bit. That's a bit of the writing from the sack that was underneath, and I want to keep that. Even there. And these things. It also gives you, by having these things, also these lines, that's when I drew the image in. I square up the image at the beginning, either from the photograph or the drawing that I've made. I square that up, measure it up, and then square the whole canvas up. And I have all these lines on, which I want to keep on the painting. Because I find that every single mark, which is not supposed to be there, actually helps the painting. So it's also, by ripping this off, I don't know what I'm going to find underneath. It's like, it's slightly scary because I might rip off the whole painting or something, but I can always paint it back. I can always find a way to get it back somehow. And all of this, it's a bit like the history of itself. You know, it started off as one thing, and then it grew and it grew and it grew. And by ripping it back, you keep going back to what it started off at. You keep keeping its. This is what Nifty does. You can't remember what you're supposed to be saying. It keeps its own tradition.
Maybe it's age. It's because you're really old.
No, I'm really young. I don't get old.
Well, earlier you said you're old. You see, you forgot that.
That's Nifty again. That's turpentine for you.
Would you say that the themes that interest you most are human beings?
Yeah.
Because some of your earlier paintings were very focused on the human body. What was it that intrigued you about the body? Was it the muscular tone? Was it the energy of each person that you painted?
No, they weren't people. I mean, I used to basically paint me because I didn't want to have anyone in the studio. So I would paint from the mirror, or then later from photographs of bits of the body. Because what I was interested in it's not the subject. It's not a person. And some people would say, who is it? And it's like, it's not relevant who it is. What I'm trying to paint. I studied anatomy at the Slade, so I always wanted to paint. You know, I did some drawings from dissections that we witnessed at the time. But at the time, I was drawing landscapes. I was drawing the city of London and stuff, and I didn't find a way to do it. When I came to Greece, I started to do actually what I wanted to do, which was to paint the anatomical parts of the body that interest me.
Do you have any of those paintings here?
Yeah, I've got one. I'm going to get it. It's a drawing. It's a lithograph. Well, can you see it in here? Or shall I bring it in there? Maybe
No, we can see it.
Well, that's a sort of a lithograph, which was from a drawing, which I then turned into a screen print. It's got lots of different things on it, but that's sort of the thing. Not really. I haven't got any. I don't think I've got anything else. Got anything else? No. Did you see it? Mm-hmm. I was interested in the body, and I still am. And there are several times when I tried to get away from it, and I started painting other things. But I found that without the body, without the human element, it just didn't speak to me. And actually that's something that this body of work is starting to, I'm finding it less important to have although most of them still have a human in them somewhere. Actually they nearly all have. Oh, so. But that's not going anywhere, that conversation. So basically I need the human element in it seems. There needs to be a connection between...
Why?
I don't know. Because for me it just doesn't really, I could be painting a bowl of fruit really. I don't see why it has to have a human in it, but that's a very difficult question.
But you've done quite a lot. You've made quite a lot of new paintings that don't have the human element, actually.
Yeah, there's a few. In fact, there's some landscapes and that is.
Can you show us some of them?
I don't know if you want to. Well, there's this one. I don't know if you can see that. It's a sort of lamppost at night.
And these are all from India?
This was in India, although I see similar things to this here. Which I could do. This was from Italy, it's not finished yet though. Can I just move them around? This was, this is also from India, I don't know if you can see it, it's probably dusty as well. I varnished it so it's very shiny. That was in the backwaters in Kerala. It's at night and it's all about that. Again, it's that stillness. Sometimes I think what I'm trying to paint is a sensation of something rather than actually an image. It's more. I want the pictures to give you, for you to react emotionally to them somehow. So it's not important necessarily the subject. I'm not trying to tell you. It's something to do with the vibration of the picture itself. That's not finished. Don't do that one. It's about the. What's it about?
What's it all about?
Yeah.
Do you mind me showing these?
No. But let me get this one. I want you to see this one. Actually, if we're doing these ones. Oh, actually, I know what I can show you. You can film. There's these ones, which I'm doing a lot of. These haven't got humans in them. Well, that one hasn't. And there's that one as well, which is of a.
Yeah, you really feel the atmosphere in them.
It's
and the use of shadows I love, because you just really, as you say, you feel the stillness and the silence of that moment. Although I imagine in India you weren't hearing silence.
No, but what I'm seeing is the bleached light, which you also have here, and the chaos, and it's this amount of stuff, which actually, if you take off everything, you're left with. I think that's what I'm trying to do, perhaps, is to see what it is that I'm interested in India. And so I'm trying to sort of take away all the stuff that I'm not interested in and just focus on the thing that I am interested in. When I'm there, it's really difficult to do that because you're bombarded on every corner. I mean, if you sit down just to start doing a drawing, I mean, 1,000 people come and ask you what you're doing. And there was a time when my initial idea in 1999 was, we were living in Nisiros up in Nikyao, in a village of 40 people, and I wanted to get away from the peace and quiet and silence, and I wanted to get into chaos, so we decided to go to New Delhi. And I decided
quite an extreme change of scene.
I know, and I decided I was going to draw in the streets, the beggars and things I was going to find, because I had no idea what I was going to find there. And so I got all my kit with me, and we were actually, on the third day or something after arriving, we ended up in Agra. We were both completely jet lagged, and we were walking down this really, really busy market. And then I saw a side street where there was nobody. There were just two cows sitting down on a bicycle. And I thought, oh my God, I can sit there. Nobody's going to see me. I can hide behind the thing. And I sat down, sat down on this chair that I found, opened up my kit that I had, got the piece of paper, I got it ready, sat down, looked up, and there were about 15 people in front of me. And I said, how did that happen? And Ornella was there. She was taking a photograph from the back, and they just grew until in the end I couldn't even see what I was going to be drawing and they were all touching my picture and asking me questions. I said, look, I mean. Can I draw it? And then eventually they made a little gap, and they were asking Ornella, where are you from? And she said, from Italy. They started singing what's that song? Bella ciao, bella ciao. Like, oh, come on, just get off, go away. So my first 4 months was really surreal. It was this thing that I couldn't actually paint what I wanted to paint because it was all there and I couldn't get to it. But nevertheless, I did a lot of stuff, but it was all from rooftops of hotels because I couldn't get into the street. Now what I'm doing is I'm going into the street and I'm taking photographs of people. Sort of they're not aware that I'm taking photographs. I'm even taking photographs from a long way, a lot of people, and then later I'm sort of zooming in into areas to see if there's anybody that's in an interesting position that then I can use later in a painting that I can turn.
So it's the challenge, I imagine, because the subjects that you could find in Greece are probably absolutely amazing as well.
Yeah, for some reason though, I've never. Well, I don't. First of all, Andros has never. I mean, it's where I'm living, and I've been here for 15 years. But there's not much that actually I feel I want to paint in Andros. I don't know why. In Nisiros there was more, but even there I never felt. It was just the darkness. I took the darkness from Nisiros, this heavy depth. And in Andros it's the same. It's the light that I take. It's that I need. But it's also the silence, because we're living miles away from the village and from horror and everything. There's nothing around, and we've got no neighbours. We're completely alone, so I can have my music on loud. When I say the silence, what I mean is I can lock myself in my own brain. I can have my music on loud, and I don't bother anybody. There's nobody walking past. There's nobody. It's my space, and I can be in it.